This is task 2B part 3. You've completed this part of the ownership model where you've been able to work out the annual payments and the balance. We're now going to look at working out in which year the customer takes ownership. Now, if we had a very straightforward model where the customer took ownership when the balance became zero, which is in fact what would happen if there weren't any additional payments, then we would be looking at down the balance column, and we'd be seeing here that £324.50 was the balance at the end of year 4, but at the end of year 5 there was minus £148.89. That means that at some point during year 5 it went from 324 down to 0. So ownership would have taken place in year 5. However, the company has an incentive scheme where it says if additional payments are made, then whatever the value of that additional payment is, during the year when the balance becomes that additional payment, then that is when ownership will take place. So we're looking in this case for when the additional payment becomes £450. So if we have a look down here, we can see that at the end of year 3 the balance was £1,840, and then in year 4 it went down to 324. So at some point in year 4 the balance reached £450, and that would be the ownership year. Now what we need to do is we need to search and find where £450 gets found in this table, and we're going to use something called the match function. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be matching the additional payment, so we're going to be looking for that additional payment within the annual balance, and if I highlight that it should say annual balance because that was the range that we named it. Now there is a couple of extra things to do, but we'll just close our brackets and see what it comes up with at the moment. At the moment it's coming up with 10, and that's because it's not sure exactly what to look for. And you'll see here that you have something called the match type, and when we go on to put that in, you get these options. So you get greater than, exact match, or less than. Well, what we want to do is we want to find when we get to that 450. So we can either go less than, we can go an exact match, which we're not going to get an exact match, or we can go less than, which would find year 3. Now, that's not quite the answer we want, but it doesn't matter. So we'll go for minus 1. It's actually greater than because we're looking for this value to be greater than that value. And if we have a look, there we go, it finds at year 3. But that's fine because we actually need to know the exact year. And if we do this and take year 3 and we add it to year of the start date, which we know will be 2014, then you'll see that by adding that we get 2017, which is actually the year that we want. So we don't need to do any further manipulation. Now what we can do is we can just test a few things out here. So I'm just going to save this before we change any values that we don't want to mess with. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take away the additional payment. And so we're now looking for it to find the balance when it's 0, because that is what the additional payment is, it's 0. So if we have a look, it says the ownership year is going to be 2020, and if you look, that is when the balance would have got down to 0, because it went from 918 down to minus 326. So we'll put back a different value here, so we'll go for an £800 of additional payments, and you can see that's going to happen in 2016, because at some point in 2016 the balance got down to that value. And we can change all sorts of figures on here, so we could change our starting year. So if we change that to 2018, we'll see now that it's still the same year 3, but it's coming up as 2020. So that completes now this ownership model. We need to go back to those original values that we had, so I'm just going to put those back to where they were. And there we go. And you're now able to print it. And if we have a look at what it says, okay, it says print the ownership model on one side of A4, including row and column headings. So that's what we're looking for. And then you'll be printing the worksheet showing the formulae and functions, including row and column headings. Remember to evidence any named cells and ranges. And you then need to explain the formulas that you use. Now, when you've used a different formula for year 1 and year 2, you'll need to show that they are different, wherever they might be different, and you'll need to explain that you've replicated them, and you need to explain each part of each formula and function, including the ownership year. Okay, so well done if you got this far, because it's a very hard task. I'm afraid it's necessarily hard because the real coursework is so hard and complex, but I need to show you something in a similarly complicated situation.